Gonzalez. Juan?
Well, in a major address on the economy, President-elect Barack Obama warned yesterday that the nation is sliding into a deep economic crisis and called on Congress to pass a stimulus package quickly.
I urge Congress to move as quickly as possible on behalf of the American people. For every day we wait or point fingers or drag our feet, more Americans will lose their jobs. More families will lose their savings. More dreams will be deferred and denied. And our nation will sink deeper into a crisis that at some point we may not be able to reverse.
The current economic crisis has often been cited as the worst the country has seen since the Depression of the 1930s. At the time, over 10,000 banks had collapsed, 1/4 of American workers were unemployed, and people were fighting over scraps of food. At the height of the Depression, Franklin Delano Roosevelt took his oath of office, pledging to reverse the crisis. On March 4th, 1933, Roosevelt delivered his inaugural address that contained one of the most famous quotes ever made by an American president.
First of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. We face our common difficulties. They concern, thank God, only material things. The withered leaves of industrial enterprise lie on every side. Farmers find no market for their produce, and the savings of many years in thousands of families are gone. More important, a host of unemployed citizens face the grim problem of existence, and an equally great number toil with little return. Only a foolish optimist can deny the dark realities of the moment. And yet we are stricken by no plague of locusts. Compared with the perils which our forefathers conquered, we have still much to be thankful for. Nature still offers her bounty, and human efforts have multiplied it. Plenty is at our doorstep. Practices of the unscrupulous money changers stand indicted in the court of public opinion, rejected by the hearts and minds of men. Yes, the money changers have fled from their high seats in the temple of our civilization. We may now restore that temple to the ancient truth. This nation is asking for action, and action now. There must be a strict supervision of all banking and credit and investment. There must be an end to speculation with other people's money. And there must be provision for an adequate but sound currency. These, my friends, are the lines of attack. I shall presently urge upon a new Congress in special session detailed measures for their fulfillment, and I shall seek the immediate assistance of the 48 states.
An excerpt of FDR's first speech as he took over the reins of the White House and laid out his plan for change in the midst of an unprecedented crisis. We're joined now by Adam Cohen. He's an assistant editorial page editor for the New York Times and author of a new book called Nothing to Fear, FDR's Inner Circle in the 100 Days That Created Modern America. This is his first interview since the book's publication. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thank you, Amy.
It's great to have you with us. Well, you say in this book, it's not just FDR himself.
That's right. The story of the 100 Days is often told as an FDR story, and he did do amazing things. That speech we saw was beautiful, mobilized the nation. He did fireside chats. He was very effective in working with Congress. But there was a second level of people underneath him, his inner circle, that really developed the policies that came out of the 100 Days. And these are critical policies. The first federal welfare program we ever had, the first major public works program, things like that. And it's other people, Francis Perkins, who we saw perched in the background behind FDR in the photo there when he was signing the Social Security Act, Henry Wallace, his agriculture secretary, Harry Hopkins, the first federal relief administrator. These were crucial people who have been lost a little bit to history.
Well, in terms of how their particular individual contributions, how did that work out, given the power of the presidency? Obviously, he had to give them the free rein to act, but how specifically did they leave their imprint on the various aspects of the legislation?
Sure. The thing about FDR is he was a great leader, but he didn't come into office with very definite views about these problems. He actually was a very pragmatic person. He said he believed if something worked, you should do it. If it doesn't work, try something new. So he was always on the lookout for good ideas wherever they came from, including from the Hoover administration. It was holdovers from the Hoover administration that developed the Banking Act that they passed in the first week. So he was looking everywhere, and that left the opening for people like Frances Perkins, who had very strong views. She came into office saying, we need public works. There are millions of people unemployed. They don't have a way to feed themselves. We need that. Harry Hopkins came down to Washington, D.C. with a plan for a federal welfare program and said, we need to do this. And
explain the scene.
Sure.
When Harry Hopkins came to Washington, it was under a stairwell that he met Frances Perkins?
Yeah, we think now of these things as being so well planned out, but they weren't at all. Harry Hopkins, who had run the New York State welfare program, comes down to Washington, eager to meet with FDR in the White House, cannot get an appointment. He calls Frances Perkins, who he knew from New York, and she says, I can meet with you, but I've got a dinner. Come by my club where I'm living. And they meet under a stairwell because they can't get a table. All the tables are taken. He hands her this program, and she says, this is great. I'm going to take it to the president and get him to adopt it. It was a very bold welfare program. A lot of federal money, a lot of federal rules, centralization. She does take it to FDR, and he does adopt it. It becomes the law. But it was literally under the stairwell that our first welfare program was developed.
And Wallace, his role, how he was chosen, and then his role within the administration?
Henry Wallace was an amazing man, a scientist, a farm journalist, and he came to Washington saying he was going to save the Farm Belt or he would just go back home to Iowa. And the Farm Belt had actually been in depression much longer than the rest of the country. They'd had a terrible 1920s. So he comes to Washington and he goes to FDR in the first week and says, we need an agriculture plan. And FDR says, go talk to the farmers, see what they want. Wallace quickly holds a meeting of all the farm leaders. They agree to this subsidy program, which was critical then to saving the farms. And within a month or two, we had this incredibly revolutionary agriculture program that did save the farmers, save the Farm Belt. Another amazing fellow.
Adam Cohen, the subtitle of Nothing to Fear is FDR's Inner Circle and the 100 Days that Created Modern America. Talk about the laws that were pushed through in this critical period.
Sure. The thing about this moment in time is that up until then, it was Herbert Hoover and it was free market capitalism. The federal government did very little. The entire federal budget was under $5 billion. They ran the post office. They had the military. That was about it. FDR comes in and says, we need essentially to create a social welfare state. So that's why we get things like the Federal Emergency Relief Act, $500 million for a welfare program. We get the Agricultural Adjustment Act, the first time the government really intervenes in the agriculture markets in that way. We get the National Industrial Recovery Act, which had some ham-handed attempts to get government and business to work together, but it had that $3.3 billion in public works money, which then became the WPA and other famous public works programs. These 15 bills were all passed incredibly quickly by a Congress that was willing to give FDR virtually anything he wanted because the country was in such dire straits.
I wanted to go to one of these crowning achievements of FDR's presidency, the passage of the Social Security Act. This is some of what President Roosevelt told the nation after he signed it into law. Behind him is Frances Perkins. It's August 14th, 1935.
This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 50 millions of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions, and through increased services for the protection of children and the prevention of ill health. We can never insure 100% of the population against 100% of the hazards and vicissitudes of life, but we have tried to frame a law which will give some measure of protection to the average citizen and to his family against the loss of a job and against poverty-stricken old age. It seems to me that if the Senate and the House of Representatives in this long and arduous session had done nothing more than pass this secure